So in this video I want to talk about correcting a colour cast. But before we look at correcting colour casts, let's have a brief discussion about how they happen. There are several ways that this could happen. One is, in this particular case, this was taken in 2013 and I used one of the original Lee Big Stopper filters. And the Big Stopper filters were notorious for giving a blue colour cast. But even today, if you get a cheap filter such as the Cokin filters, which are quite cheap, quite popular, but they're quite cheap, and if you stack them together in particular, you will get a magenta colour cast. They're quite well known for that. There's a good reason why, you know, professional photographers spend a lot of money on getting the filters, and that's because they really want to try and minimize this kind of effect. But this isn't the only way you can get this. Another way you could get this is if you are shooting JPEG, for example, and you get your white balance, color temperature wrong in camera. So if this was shot on, if this was a daylight photo and you shoot it under fluorescent light, you will get a blue color cast. If you're shooting a person under bright sunlight and they're wearing, or they're laying on grass, they'll pick up a green cast. Or if you've got brightly coloured clothing, you might pick up that colour from the clothing. Now this is how reflectors work. If you've got an assistant who holds a reflector to reflect light back onto your subject, by changing the colour of the filter, of the reflector, you can change the colour of that person. Basically, you're giving them a cast. So this is a filter, as I said, I took in 2013 of Bocheli Etiv Moor up in Scotland, and I used the Lee Big Stopper for this. Now if we look at the histogram, this is how you can identify whether you may have a colour cast or not. So if you look here on the right hand side, it's quite distinctly blue peaks up there. Now this doesn't mean that you definitely do have a colour cast, particularly if it's blue. If you've got a photograph with a lot of blue sky in it and maybe blue reflections in water, then you would expect to have blue peaks up here. But if that was magenta, if we go into the develop module and I just slide up the magenta in here and we pull back, get rid of the blue cast, notice now how we've got a magenta set of peaks on there. And if we look at the photo, it's definitely got a magenta tint to it. So let's undo those and let's look at how we can go about correcting it. So we have an eyedropper here. So I'm doing this in Lightroom and I'm going to show you shortly how you would do this inside Photoshop. But we have an eyedropper here, and this eyedropper, I need to click on something which is either pure black or supposed to be pure black, something which is supposed to be pure white, or something which is a mid-grey. Well, I don't really have anything in here which is supposed to be pure white or pure black, but there's lots of mid-grey stuff in here. So let's pick on something which is supposed to be mid-grey, say this rock here. We click on that, and that's got rid of a lot of the colour cast. Now I might want to do some more work to this just to brighten it up a bit. I think it's still a bit on the blue side. In fact, we do have those blue peaks there. So what we might do here is just warm this up just a touch to get rid of those blue peaks and try and make the clouds in the sky a bit grey, which is what they were. Now at this point we can start doing more work to tone the photograph. Now I'm not going to do that in this image, but suffice to say that now we've got this photo into what is a relatively neutral colour position. Now we can go through and start colour grading the image. Now the other thing that we can do with this is to simply turn the photo black and white. So let's take this photo back to as it was imported, and we'll just turn this black and white. And then we can click on auto just to auto tone it, and we've now got a photo which is usable. So we can start doing work in here. So we can grab the local adjustment brush Let's just make sure that everything is zeroed, and we'll just push up the exposure and the contrast, and we can just start clicking on various bits and pieces in here just to start adding more contrast into the rocks. Let's do a new brush. What I like to do is just do some stuff through here. Certainly want to pull the exposure up a bit to add a bit more life into this corner. And you can keep going like that. Here's a tip for you. If I switch this back into colour, what you'll find if you had toned this correctly in colour is that you get all sorts of weird colours coming through here. I haven't done that. I really would leave this as black and white. I think this works better in black and white than it does in colour. Okay, so let's undo all of this and go back to the original image, and let's fire this over into Photoshop. And I'll show you how we can correct these casts in Photoshop. So before we do that, I just want to open up my colour wheel. There it is. Because we're going to use curves to correct this. If we look at the colour wheel here, you notice that we've got every colour in here going from red through yellow, green, cyan, blue, magenta, and back to red again. And this works in basically 3 primary pairs. So opposite blue we have yellow, opposite green we have magenta, and opposite red we have cyan. So if I add a curves adjustment layer to my photo and I want to get rid of the blue, then what I need to do is I need to push it towards the yellow. In fact, that's what we did in Lightroom. We shifted the white balance from blue to yellow. So let's go to my photo and we'll put a curves adjustment layer on here. If I now drop this down, we have blue. If I move this curve up to the right, we put more blue into it, and if we move it down to the left, we put more yellow into it. So somewhere in here we should be able to find something which is reasonably accurate. Now we have a tool up here which, if I click on it, allows me to click on part of the image, and that will automatically set a point along this line which corresponds to this particular colour. And then in here I can drag this down and it pulls the curve down to give me my or to get rid of that bluish tone. And then from here I can then go on and we can start adding in other adjustments. So we might add a brightness layer in here just to brighten the image up. We could add in here, believe it or not, I'm going to add another curves layer in here. And so what I'm going to do this time is select down there, and I'm just going to put an S curve into this to add some more contrast, and we can just type down into here by modifying the mask. Now I'm not going to go through the whole thing and do this, but basically, you know, again, let's just go down in here. I want to brighten this up, and I'm just going to target this corner. So on the mask we'll add my brush, and with a black brush because we're painting on a white mask. Let's just, oops, that's not right. Actually, I will paint in here. Quick tip: if you've got a small area that you want to mask out, paint it in black and then invert the mask. And so we can do a lot more stuff in here. You know, maybe I want to add a bit more in the shadow area. Let's add some more brightness in there. And so you can build it up. But the point is that I used a curves layer to get rid of that colour cast. And that's how you would do that in Photoshop. If you don't have curves if you're using Photoshop Elements, and I don't think Elements has curves in quite the same way. In fact, why don't we have a look? So let's go and edit this inside Photoshop Elements. And to do that in here, we're going to go to Enhance, or Adjust Color, Remove Color Cast. And then to do this, we're just going to click on part of the image that should be either grey, white or black. And so let's go and click on there. And that's got rid of most of the colour cast. Now, I'm not sure I actually clicked on a good place, so that we can do this one again. Let's click on something else. Certainly the mountain is grey. Let's try that one. No, and we can just click around in here. I'm just looking to get something where that sky isn't quite so blue. Yeah, maybe there is okay. If we click on the water, I think it's going to go quite peculiar. So it's just a question of clicking around and trying to find something which gives you still think coming back here is probably a better option in there, which gets rid of most of that cast, and then from there you can then go on and start processing the image, editing the image as you would do normally.